Hello, Humane Marketers. Sarah Znakrocha here. Welcome to another episode of the Humane Marketing Podcast, a place to be for the generation of marketers who cares. This is the show where we talk about marketing your business in a way that feels good to you, is aligned with your values, and also resonates more with your conscious customers because it's not pushy, ethical, and also beautiful. So if you're a regular here, you know that I'm organizing the conversations around the 7 Ps of humane marketing. And if you're new here and this is your first time, welcome. I'm so excited you're here. You may want to download your one-page marketing plan with the 7 Ps of humane marketing in the form of a mandala at humane.marketing/one page, the number one and page. So again, humane.marketing/one page. And with that, with no further ado, let's dive into today's conversation. Hi, Siobhan. How are you today?
Hello, I am so well. How are you?
I'm good too. Yeah. And you just mentioned you moved house, and as an introvert and highly sensitive person, that it feels always like, oh, that is a big thing. I don't know how you feel, but to me, moving is a big thing.
It's a big thing, and it's always surprising how much stuff actually exists that we don't use.
Yeah. You collect things over time, and then it's a good opportunity to get rid of some stuff as well, right? Yeah.
It absolutely is, yes. But subtly, I think sometimes you have to do it a bit subtly. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. All right, this is the second time we actually get to chat and talk. I was on your podcast, and now you're here talking to us about book writing, and I'm really excited to dive into this topic. First of all, also because I've just gone through that last year, and then also, yeah, just curious to hear what you think about it. And you kind of brought up this conversation around, writing a book can be good for your business, and so we'll dive into that. But maybe before we start, I'd be curious to have you share a bit, how you became a book writing mentor. How did you decide, okay, that is what I'm going to do?
This is a great question, and I'll try and keep it the short version, not the long version. A few years ago, I was sort of having some doubts about my career in communications in government, and I wasn't sure what to do. And I thought, I've spent so many years practicing this communication craft, helping clients to essentially market their services and programs to the public. And I just didn't want to progress with promotions anymore. And I wasn't sure what the heck to do. And so I thought, well, what was the thing that I loved to do as a kid? Because I really wanted to connect deeply with something meaningful, because one of my core values is meaningful work or impact. And I thought back to when I was a child and just absolutely loved to write stories, and remembered how I wanted to be April from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but maybe not so much of a reporter, more of a telling the truth and whatever that is. So I really went on a bit of a journey. I started writing children's picture books, and then I began writing and reconnecting with the spoken word through my podcast, which really lit me up, and then helping other people to start that writing process themselves. And it was just, I think the hardest thing about starting to write is starting to write.
Yeah, this is so good. I love that you went back to your childhood. I tell that to my clients, or it's part of the humane marketing approach. Is like, well, how do you figure out what you're passionate about, or what your why is, or kind of this big purpose word? Well, oftentimes it is going back to what you like to do as a child. And I love that you did that in order to figure out then, well, what is it that I really want to do? It's so good. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And I hope that, people listening who might be in a career transition or not really sure of their next step know that they're absolutely not alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So then you started writing children's books, but I think eventually you also kind of pivoted into this whole idea of helping others with their book, right? So tell us what you learned in that journey of, then writing your own business book, so to speak, that worked for you.
This is also one of those, see, I really like to plan things in my life. And this was yet again one of those things that was completely unplanned. I have a business coach, and, I was speaking about how I would like to get my children's picture books published, the stories published in the traditional sense. And she really questioned me on it and said, well, why wouldn't you just self-publish them? Mm-hmm. And I thought, I have resistance to this idea. Mm-hmm. Why do I have resistance to this idea? And then I thought, I'm going to go after this, because what I find happens with me is that I get resistance there for a reason. And thankfully, I have people, kind of like signposts, helpful souls along the way to help me really get back on the right path and question and reflect why I might be resisting things. So I really did some discernment work and thought, I don't actually want to self-publish the children's picture books yet. They need more work, but I will go ahead and self-publish. And it was just a matter of then deciding what that was going to be. And the thing that I had done was, I'd had lots of content available on my podcast for free. And many of those things were really quite practical steps and strategies that people can take to, when they're learning about how to start writing, how to make it a habit, and then how to go on and self-publish. But what I wanted to do was actually self-publish my own book so that I could help other people from that extra layer of experience that I think is absolutely crucial whenever you are teaching people or helping others to reconnect with their own writing or creative inspiration. So that's sort of the journey of what I've been on. And honestly, self-publishing, it's just opened a whole new world for me. And I know that it's something that, is not, it hasn't been around for hundreds of years, but the technology at the moment is allowing quite a large growth in that industry. So there's lots of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you end up publishing your children's books the traditional way?
Not yet. I am still working on those. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, I definitely would like to, and it's something that I will pursue, but I have another project up my sleeve at the moment. So that's something that I'm focusing on this year, is this new project, which is actually writing a memoir. So it's something that I haven't done before, right, and am really, really excited about where it can lead. I just think, I kind of boxed myself in thinking I'll just be a children's picture book writer, but this has opened up that other door for me as well to think about, well, there are actually other kind of formats and categories of writing, and it's just immense, this opportunity that we have to really express ourselves creatively.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I went through the same thing when I thought about, do I self-publish? Do I publish within, the traditional way? And there's obviously two camps. If you do search online or, if you work with coaches, one will tell you this is absolutely the only way. And then others tell you, well, you can be just as, I was going to say successful, but that's not really the word I want to use, but you can, get the book out there and attract the right people, even with self-publishing. And so I really also had to think about, for me, what really was the driving factor as well is the timing, because I just felt that my books were very timely. Like they needed to come out now, not, when I eventually found an editor a publisher, and it's just like I had to get them out now. So I think that makes a huge difference. Even I'm talking to friends who are kind of hybrid publishing, so meaning they have some kind of support with the publishing. They actually do print a book, and even there's like the time it takes is much longer, even though you pay for those, you pay up front, and it takes much more time to actually get the book out, and there's delays, and where in the self-publishing process, I feel like you are really the driver of this thing. Of course, there's editing, if you're hopefully going to go through some editing phases, but you are much more in control than if you work with the traditional way. Would you agree with that? Is that also your experience?
I absolutely agree with that. With some of the benefits of self-publishing, as you would know, Sarah, are you own the rights to your book rather than the publisher owning those rights. Mm-hmm. Like you've just said, you don't have to wait around for months for a publisher to reply to your query letter. Mm-hmm. You get to choose with the suppliers that you want to work with along the way. So people like editors and graphic designers, it's a huge advantage being able to personally choose the people that you're going to be working with collaboratively, which is another gorgeous part of, self-publishing and creating this thing and birthing it into the world. I think, you get to craft your own journey, your own steps along the way, and, in the timing that really matters to you and your life priorities. So these are the things that to me were really meaningful, mm-hmm. and things that I hadn't really thought about prior to finding out more about self-publishing.
Yeah, it's so important, and I know countless stories of people who worked with a publisher and kind of felt like they had to bend their integrity just a little bit because they didn't really feel exactly aligned. The cover didn't look like they wanted it to look, or they had to use a certain title just because it sold more. Because obviously the publisher's job then is to sell as many books as possible. So yeah, it's really also, I think in my opinion, it's really a question of ethics as well. It's like, are you okay, going really with the big publisher to go after more book sales in a way? I'm hesitating to bring this up, but I think there's also a question of ego in this game, because if you look at the people who have, published with a real publisher, then it does sound still good, right? And maybe that's also why we had resistance to go with self-publishing. It's like, oh, but that's not the real thing, it's like
100%. 100%.
My ego gets a little hit if I'm not really publishing the real traditional way. So I think there's some deeper inner work to do there as well.
I love that you brought that up, because that was definitely a piece of my own resistance, and particularly towards children's picture books. I had one of the self-publishing platforms that I help people to navigate. A representative from there actually said, pretty much you can publish any type of book. I wouldn't necessarily recommend children's picture books. And I thought, oh, that's curious, because it has to do with the quality of the paper and the book material. And her sense was that children's picture books, are getting there, where she's at the point where she has to really try to see that it's self-published. Mm-hmm. But other books are probably better done, in other genres and with other types of materials available. But yeah, really for me, it was like, I remember having a conversation with my husband about it, saying, I would really like to have these particular stories, published by a publisher, by, a real industry publisher, as someone who's known. And he just looked at me and said, isn't that just an ego thing? And I went, oh. So I really like these conversations with people that you can trust about how you're feeling. And I absolutely agree with you. It did require some work on the ego. And, I think another thing to remember as well is that if you're really kind of hanging on this idea of being traditionally published, there are people today who have self-published and then had their material picked up by traditional publishers because they've seen that it's successful in the market, which is primarily what publishers are looking at. Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah. It's kind of like the backup plan. You're telling your ego, well, there's always that chance.
Exactly. Calm down.
Okay, that's great. I love that we're sharing kind of openly about this ego stuff that's going on. Yeah, when you're deciding, which way to go. Let's talk about, just in general, why writing a book and having a book can be good for a business, an entrepreneur, a coach, a consultant, any type of service entrepreneur, I guess.
Absolutely. So I think for me, there are 5 key things. The first benefit is relationship. So, for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, you can really build that one-to-one, intimate, knowing relationship with your client or your prospective client. So it is a form of long form content, which helps to really create and nurture the knowing relationship between you, the author, and the person with the expertise in a particular area, which is what you're telling through your story in your book, and that real connection through the language and stories that you're telling about the expertise, but also with fragments of yourself strewn throughout the book that your client's going to resonate with. So, I think it helps your client to understand your values as well and what you stand for, which is either going to repel or attract people. So, but it is a really powerful medium. So that's the first thing I would say. The second is, it's you providing a transformation to someone, whether it's a solution that you might have that's related to, I don't know, say you're a vegan chef or something, a solution to meal planning during the week, and your story of how you got to how you meal plan as a vegan, it's something that you can teach really easily through a book format. So, I think transformation doesn't have to be necessarily transforming your whole life, but pieces of your life that eventually lead to greater change. So that's number 2. Number 3 is, and I mentioned a little bit about this before, but you're showing that you do have expertise in this particular area, so of your business, and really you're building your credibility by having this. Essentially, it's one of the tools that you have in your toolkit as a business owner. You can also have greater visibility when you're connecting with other business owners and collaborating with other people on, who can help you to promote your book, but also establishing those relationships, I think, is really crucial. So that's the third thing. And the fourth thing is it's low cost. And when I say that, I say it with a caveat, because you can make it as expensive as you like to produce your book, but essentially you can do it on a pretty tight budget. If you don't want to produce a printed book, you can produce an ebook, and they're much less expensive to produce, obviously, because there's no printing cost involved. And the actual purchase price of ebooks is much lower because, the person isn't ordering and they don't have to have a physical book delivered. So that's number 4, is low cost. Mm-hmm. And the 5th thing is something that's probably overlooked a little bit, and it's that you get to be creative. So, you get to really hone your message. You really get to clarify it and be really clear about what it is, and, even redefine it if you need to. So that's a huge benefit. And even eventually you can repurpose the content that you have in your book. So they're just the 5 benefits of why having a book in your business is a good idea.
Yeah, I love all of them. I think my favorite one is definitely the number one, the relationship, because I do feel like you, it's like a podcast, but it's even it's different because you don't hear the voice, obviously, but since it's long form, it's really like you're, spending, depending on the length of the book, but you're spending a few hours with, with the author. And oftentimes, I don't know how many people read books like I do in their bed, but oftentimes in like, really cozy kind of surroundings. And so you feel like really you're getting up close to the author. And yeah, I think that makes a huge difference. And of course, that depends how much you also bring of you to your book as the author. Just like in Humane Marketing, we bring a lot of us to our marketing. I definitely encourage listeners, if you are writing a book, do bring parts of you to your book as well, because that's where the relationship really gets deeper. And like you said, people get to see your values. I think that's so important. Yeah, I wanted to also follow up on the cost. Maybe we can just go a bit deeper there, because if you're completely new to this, like I had no idea what it would cost to write a book, whether self-published or not. So can you maybe share some insights there for our listeners?
I'm very happy to do that. So, I mentioned the vague statement that you can do it for as much or as little as you like. Really, it's all about, the time and the investment that you have, that you're willing to make in publishing your book. So what I always recommend is that you decide on your budget first, and then you allocate, particular, not percentages, but you prioritize things like editing and book cover design, because these are the things that are going to attract or repel your readers. And one of the biggest bugbears that people have about self-published books is the quality. So people are getting much better at doing this well, but I think especially in the early years of the self-publishing industry, there were some people who would just, publish whatever they liked without editing. And I know that everyone listening would absolutely never think of doing that ever. But it's just something to be mindful of, and that I emphasize, in my courses that I have available, is that quality. You really need to prioritize that, because again, the book that you're producing represents your standards and your values, and your readers will either be attracted or repelled by those. So, but going back to cost, there, like you mentioned, there are agencies that do provide kind of that hybrid publishing model. They tend to be, I would say, literally for me, when I was doing the research around this, upwards of, $5,000, going up very quickly to,
That's
tens of
probably the
thousands
lowest
of dollars,
you would
tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah, exactly. So you're right there, or you can take the reins and enjoy stepping through the self-publishing process yourself. As an example, my book, I published it in under 3 months, and I didn't set a strict budget, but I published it within a budget of 1,500 Australian dollars. So that's around, I'd say, probably 800 or 900 US dollars. And that included all of the setup costs, my, international standard book number, ISBN, graphic design and editing, and all of those things. And I didn't promote very much though, however. So that's what I advise people to do. I just really wanted to produce this book to just, see if I could do it and see what the process was like. But definitely from my perspective, I think that's that fairly inexpensive way to do it. And I did engage a professional graphic designer who did both the typesetting, so setting the type, the font, all of that sort of thing, as you would be aware, Sarah, and the actual design of the book cover and all those sorts of things as well. I went to a professional editor for 2 of the 3 editing steps. So I did my own structural editing, but then I had two editors. I neglected to mention that, but I chose to have two different editors for the two different types of editing, which is not 100% necessary, but I did choose to do that. So, there are ways and means. You can pull one lever, you can spend more in one area than another. But for me, I put most of my funding into the quality aspects of producing the book, because that was the thing that was really crucial to me in producing the book. So does that answer your question about that?
It does. And what I would add is, there's the quality of the book in terms of, spelling and the paper and the design, the formatting. There's definitely a quality aspect of that. But then there's obviously the quality of the actual content, the writing, how your big idea comes through. Is there any kind of structure in your thoughts? And that, to me, is just as important, if not more, than the actual quality in terms of, is there any spelling mistakes? You can read a very, good quality book in terms of, there's no spelling mistakes, but then it's like all over the place and you're like finished reading the book and you have no idea what you actually just read. Yeah. And so that's why, to me, there's also cost related to maybe working with someone like you, or someone. I do also kind of work on the big idea. I don't do the same work as you in terms of how to actually write it, but let's come up with this idea that your book is going to be about, so that you have a structure and there's 3 chapters, there's going to be 3 sub-chapters, so there's a good flow in the book, because otherwise, I feel that's really a big part of the quality of the book as well. So maybe you can share a bit what your role is in helping your clients with some of that, right?
Oh, absolutely. So I 100% agree. And in fact, it's quite amusing that, I started off speaking with you today talking about how I remembered when I was a child, what I loved to do. And that actually continued, through university. And my major was writing and cultural studies. So, I think absolutely you can have a beautifully wrapped gift with nothing in it, It's absolutely, you can definitely have that, but that's not going to engage people. It's not going to excite people, inspire people, help them to see the world differently, which is really the true power of books, I believe. And, I think in terms of, the structure is one thing, ideas, that's where you need to start really, is what is this book about? What is this book about? And being super, super clear on what that is, and not letting anything else come into the story that isn't part of that big theme that you're writing about. So, I could talk for hours about this. So really it's about, you need to make sure that you spend that time to allow yourself to have the space to come up with the ideas. And then the big idea, the big theme for the book, that is the universal theme that's going to connect with your readers at that deeply human level. And so, makes sense now that I'm speaking on humane marketing, because I'm talking about the human connection here. Yeah. But you must have that down pat before you pick up your pen to write. You must have your core idea, and that can take a lot of time to get right. And to really, I think one of the things in Western society in particular is that we don't allow enough stillness to allow those ideas to come in and really marinate on them and let them take shape. So, you would know about this, because I believe that in your book, it just, everything flows really well. And you've got a beautiful, like I said to you a little while ago, Sarah, that I felt like I was just sort of sitting, having coffee with you, and you were taking me on this journey. And that's exactly how you want to feel when you're reading a book and really deeply connecting with the author. So I would start there. Then there comes the most difficult part, I believe, which is actually sitting down and writing a really messy first draft. And that has to be done, whether you plan it out then or you just write and then restructure. Divides people into two camps, which are the pantsers, people who fly by the seat of their pants, and the planners. And so I have struggled over the years to realize that my approach to writing had been pantsing, but I'm actually a life planner. So, it's hilarious the way that creativity works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny when I think about me, I'm an INFJ. So the J, stands for judging, but really what it is, it's planning everything. And so that's what my life looks like. And so that's how I wrote my books and managed to write 2 books in a year. It really is that structured approach, but I can totally see that it worked. That, the other camp can work as well. It just depends what your natural superpowers are. And if the more creative approach, that's just how you are wired, then I don't see anything wrong with that. It's just different.
I need to sort of correct myself a little bit there, because you always need structure. Your book is always going to need structure in terms of the method of how you
go about it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. People are very different. So yeah, unfortunately for people who don't like structure, it's part of writing a book, and it's part of what makes, it's like part of constructing a house. You need the pillars to be standing strongly to be able to build that beautiful framework for people to glide through that house. So you absolutely need structure. Yes.
I find like it's almost like if you are naturally structured, then you probably won't need as much guidance with that. Maybe you need more kind of mental unblocking, it's like mental guidance, confidence coaching, that kind of support, or creativity writing, where if you are naturally just creative and you can write for hours, then you need more help with the structure. Do you agree with that?
I think it's very individual, and it depends on how you best learn to write, and also then how you apply that. So yeah, we're all quite unique in that, and it's really about you've kind of hit the nail on the head there, Sarah. It's about working out your best writing life and how you write with inspiration, and how you motivate yourself to write the story that's meaningful for your readers and for you, because ultimately you're not going to sit down and spend hours writing something that isn't meaningful for you as well. So I think that's something else that is kind of overlooked a little bit, is just the sheer enjoyment of the process is really important. Like if you don't enjoy writing at all, you're under no obligation to do it at all. It's really about, is this a medium that lights you up? And, if you enjoy reading books and you're entertaining the thought of writing, and you have this kind of deep little flame inside that says, write the book, write the book, write the book, then I believe that's absolutely there for a reason. I think what I primarily do is really guide people to understanding the process of, well, first of all, accepting the hardest part of writing is actually sitting down and writing and making it a habit in your life and integrating it into your life. And I help people with the time management side of that. And when I say time management, I don't mean, providing them with the schedule, but actually really looking at their values and life priorities and identifying, if writing is one of those, well, how do I make that, how do I have that reflected in my schedule? And then assisting them with the strategies and tools to be able to integrate it. And I think, I have a couple of courses available. One of them goes through, how to write and finish your first draft. So that messy draft process, starting to write, making it a habit, and then writing the thing, actually doing it. And then for people who want to continue on and actually do want to self-publish, there's the author, the unlocked author rather, which steps people through the whole process. So it's really about, I feel like one of the really big barriers to starting to write and then going on to self-publish is the sheer overwhelm about all of the information that's just available everywhere, and trying to, sift through that and work out, well, this person writes for 4 hours a day. This person, gets up at 4 a.m. and this person writes at 11 p.m. Which one's right for me? And it is always going to be about what's uniquely right for you as a writer.
Yeah. So important. Do not think you have to do it like, everyone else is telling you to works for them. Yeah. So are these courses the main part of your work? Do you also work one-on-one? Tell us a bit more about how you work.
Yeah, so I do have these courses. So, the first one I mentioned is called The Writer Unlocked, and it's actually the book that I produced is the book version of that course. So I provided it in another medium, which goes back to what I was saying earlier about the great thing about books is that you can repurpose them. But it really is for people who want to write and just need that guidance. And I do have an online community that people can join for that accountability, because I talk a lot about that in the course. And again, it's unique to you. One form of accountability, my form of accountability is not going to work for everybody. So understanding those really important key parts of taking writing into your life as a practice, really. So that definitely there's that course, and then the self-publishing course, which is the unlocked author. But I do offer one-on-one services, mentoring services for people who are feeling particularly stuck. I tend to find that, one of the main things that happens for all writers, I've only ever had one author who said that they don't experience it, but is the inner critic, and strategies to help people to basically put that thing on mute, because it can be done. It won't go away, but we're all familiar with that mute button now, so we can do that. We can put it on mute and write anyway.
Nice. Yeah.
Yep.
That's wonderful. I think you also have a free guide that tell us a bit about that, and we'll share the link in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I think, I say that one of the hardest things is starting to write. I think the other thing is the idea of time. So particularly for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs who are trying to work out, okay, well, if you've decided that writing a book is for you, or you're thinking about it, then one of the barriers can be, how do I actually fit this into my life? And so I created the Time to Write guide, and you can get it for free from bit.ly/time to write guide. And in that guide, you get essentially a way to identify where you truly do have time, because you do if you prioritize it and it means something to you and you value it. And there is a schedule in there for you to plan that writing time in. I've also provided a few options for you as well if you're really struggling with those limiting beliefs, which is supported through the Unlocked Creative podcast as well. So that's also for free.
Wonderful. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the podcast as well. And people can also, we'll put the link to our episode when I was a guest on yours, so people can go check that one out. So yeah, thank you so much, Siobhan. This was delightful. I always have one last question, and that is, what are you grateful for today or this?
Thank you so much. It's just, first of all, I'm grateful for being here on the show with you, because I absolutely adore speaking with you. And so that's one thing, but I'll go another one, which is, honestly, it's summer here in Australia, and I had this delightful run this morning in the cool air, and it was bliss.
Nice. Yeah, it's winter here, but it's pretty bliss today as well. Wonderful sunshine. So thank you. Yeah, thank you for hanging out and really kind of shining a light on this book publishing process. I think people will really appreciate the honesty with which we shared here today, because I find like, you know, a lot of these things that are completely new to us, we just have no idea. We have these, maybe these, or we do have some ideas, but often they're wrong. And so hopefully this has helped some listeners to really kind of get a deeper understanding of that process. So thank you so much for sharing, Siobhan.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thanks so much for watching and being part of a generation of marketers who cares for yourself, for your clients, and for the planet. We really are change makers before we are marketers. So go ahead, be the change you want to see in the world. And I hope to see you again next week. Take care.